You know, we've all been there. You're driving, maybe you're late for a crucial meeting, or you're just trying to get home after a long day. Suddenly you see brake lights. It's a red sea ahead. You creak forward inch by inch, and you realize it's not an accident.
Right.
It's not construction. It's a crowd. You see placards, you hear shouting. Maybe it's tractors blocking the highway or students linking arms across the university gate.
And that sinking feeling in your stomach.
Exactly. And be honest, the immediate visceral reaction for most of us is annoyance. We think, great, another disruption. Why can't they just follow the rules? Why do they have to make my commute a nightmare?
It feels like a glitch in the matrix, like the system is frozen and you're just stuck buffering.
It does. It feels like a breakdown of order. But, and this is why I have fallen in love with sociology and why we do this show, if you put on your sociologist glasses, that traffic jam isn't a glitch. It isn't an error code. It's actually the heartbeat of a living democracy. Those aren't just events or riots or inconveniences. They are social movements.
That's a great way to put it.
And today, we're going to prove that they are actually the corrective mechanism that keeps society from falling apart.
That is a beautiful and provocative way to frame it. We tend to view stability as the norm and protest as the disease. You know, we think a quiet society is a healthy society.
All right. Silence equals everything's fine.
But in a diverse, stratified, and frankly, deeply unequal society like India, social movements are the primary language of the unheard. It's how the margins talk to the center.
How the margins talk to the center. I am absolutely stealing that.
I mean, think about it. If the traffic didn't stop, the government wouldn't look. If the noise wasn't loud enough to disturb your commute, it wouldn't be loud enough to disturb the policymakers.
So true. Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we are on a very specific, high-stakes mission. We are breaking down Chapter 23, Social Movements in Modern India, from, well, The Bible of Sociology Aspirants, Essential Sociology by Nitin Sangwan.
And we should be clear, we aren't just doing a book report here.
Not at all. This is a custom-tailored analysis for the Simplified UPSC by PPP community.
We are going to be connecting the dots between the textbook theory, which can be a bit dry and abstract, let's be honest.
It can be.
And the actual questions the UPSC have been throwing at students, including the fresh curveballs from the 2024 and 2025 papers. Because understanding the theory is one thing, but knowing how to deploy it when you have, 6 minutes to write an answer?
That's a whole different ballgame.
Completely different skill.
So before we jump into the chaos of protests and the theory of revolution, a huge shout out to the engine keeping this show running, the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel. If you are getting value out of this, please, we have a humble request. Head over to the channel and hit subscribe. It really, really helps keep this content flowing. It signals to us that this is working for you.
And for those who are capable and want to help us keep deconstructing these dense topics, please consider supporting the team on Patreon. Your support literally lights the fire for these deep dives.
It really does.
It allows us to do the research, comb through the archives, and synthesize this material so you don't have to spend weeks doing it yourself.
Absolutely. A massive thank you to all our current supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. And hey, engage with us. Like the audio. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. It helps the algorithm find more learners like you.
And a quick resource alert.
Oh, yes.
If you're scrambling to write this down, stop. Don't worry about taking dictation. There are free notes with practice PYQs available on the public Telegram channel.
And if you want the full deep dive experience, I'm talking organized premium notes, detailed summaries, extra PYQs, and crucially, model mains answers that show you exactly how to structure your thoughts.
Then you'll want to join the private Telegram library.
Yeah.
Just DM the team on the public Telegram channel to get access.
Okay, plugs done. Let's get to work. We have a beast of a topic today. We need to define what a movement actually is, look at the theories of why they happen, and then we're going to split this discussion into the big four that show up in the exam constantly. Peasant and farmer movements, women's movements,
Always a big one.
Dalit and backward class movements, and finally, environmental and ethnic movements.
And we'll wrap up by looking at how the digital age is changing everything, which is becoming a favorite topic for the examiners.
Oh, yeah.
The intersection of technology and sociology is where the new questions are coming from.
So let's start at the very beginning. Social movement. It sounds fancy, but how is it different from, say, a riot? Or just a mob? Or me yelling at my TV because my cricket team lost?
It's a crucial distinction, and the UPSC expects you to know it. If you quote Nitin Sangwan or, any standard sociologist, the distinction is clear.
Okay.
A protest or a riot can be a one-off event. It's spontaneous, it flares up, and then it dies down.
Yeah.
A social movement requires sustained collective action.
Sustain, that's the key word.
That's the one. It implies a duration. It has an organization, a leadership structure, and an ideology. It's aimed at either bringing about social change or, sometimes, resisting it.
Okay, so let me try to apply this. If I get mad about a pothole in front of my house and I go out and yell at the municipal commissioner, that's a protest.
Right.
Maybe I even throw a stone in anger. That's a riot.
Possibly, yes.
But if I gather my neighbors, form a Fix Our Streets committee, elect a treasurer, collect funds, and campaign for 6 months to change city policy regarding road maintenance, that's a movement.
Precisely. You've moved from event to process.
Event to process. I like that.
And if I can, I've got a bit of a wild analogy for this, actually.
I love your analogies. Let's hear it.
Think of the difference between a one-night stand and a marriage.
Okay. I was not expecting that in a sociology discussion, but let's unpack it.
No, but think about it. A riot or a spontaneous protest is like a one-night stand. It's intense, emotional, maybe chaotic, fueled by immediate passion or anger, but it's over quickly. And the next morning, you might just go back to your normal life. It doesn't necessarily change your life status or your identity.
Right.
A social movement is a marriage. It's a commitment. It requires structure. It requires planning. You have to pool resources. You have to negotiate.
And you have to stick with it.
And most importantly, you have to stick with it even when the initial passion fades and the boring bureaucracy of living together sets in.
That is surprisingly accurate. And just like a marriage, movements have a life cycle, right? They don't just stay in the honeymoon phase of excitement forever.
Right. Sociologists identify specific stages. First, you have emergence, where the issue is identified. Everyone is just angry or agitated. There's a sense that something is wrong.
Just a feeling in the air.
Exactly. Then comes coalescence, where people organize, they strategize, they pick leaders, they decide, okay, we're angry, but what are we going to do about it?
The action plan.
Then comes bureaucratization. This is the tricky part. As the movement grows, it needs rules. It needs paid staff. It needs offices.
Which can kill the vibe, I imagine. It stops being about the cause and starts being about maintenance and fundraising.
It can. Bureaucratization often kills the passion that started the movement. We call it the iron law of oligarchy. Eventually, the organization becomes more important than the goal.
Wow.
But without it, the movement collapses from disorganization. You need that structure to survive.
It's a paradox.
It is. And finally, you have decline. But decline isn't always bad. A movement can decline because of success.
You won.
You got what you wanted. The suffragettes stopped marching because women got the vote.
Right, yeah.
Or failure. Or co-optation, where the leadership gets bought off by the government. Or repression by the state using force.
Or what about mainstreaming, like how environmentalism used to be this fringe hippie thing, and now every major corporation claims to be green and sells sustainable products?
Exactly. The movement dies as a distinct entity because it becomes the norm. It dissolves into the culture.
Fact.
Now, before we look at the specific types of movements in India, we have to answer the why. Why do people revolt? Common sense says because they are poor and miserable.
That seems logical. If you're hungry, you fight. If you're oppressed, you rebel.
And common sense would be only partially right. In fact, sociology often tells us that common sense is wrong.
This is where it gets good.
This is where the theory gets interesting. If poverty caused revolutions, India would have been in a state of permanent revolution for centuries. But it hasn't.
True.
The poorest people are often the quietest.
Yeah.
They're too busy surviving to organize.
So what is the actual trigger? If it's not just poverty, what is it?
M.S.A. Rao, a key sociologist mentioned in the text who studied Indian movements extensively, talks about relative deprivation theory.
Relative deprivation.
It's not about what you have, it's about what you think you should have compared to a reference group.
Okay, so if I have a bicycle and everyone else in my village walks, I'm happy. I feel rich.
You feel great.
But if I have a bicycle and my neighbor gets a car...
Now you feel deprived. Your absolute condition hasn't changed. You still have the bike, but your relative position has dropped.
Ah.
It's the gap between expectation and reality. This explains why often it's not the poorest of the poor who lead movements, but the upwardly mobile groups who feel blocked.
So, like the reservation demands by Jats or Marathas or Patidars.
A perfect example. They aren't the poorest castes, but they feel they're losing ground relative to others, or that their expectations of prosperity aren't being met.
That makes so much sense. It's about the perception of injustice, not just the math of it. What about other theories?
Well, you have structural strain theory. When the society's value system clashes with reality, creating friction. But my favorite for the exam, and the one that explains modern movements best, is resource mobilization theory.
This is the cynical one, right?
I prefer practical. It says passion isn't enough. You can be angry, you can be deprived, you can be absolutely right. But if you don't have money, communication networks, charismatic leadership, and organizational capacity, you are just people yelling at clouds.
So you need resources.
You need to mobilize resources to turn anger into action. A movement is a business of sorts. It needs capital, social capital, financial capital, and human capital.
That's a crucial point for writing answers. Don't just talk about the emotion, talk about the machinery of the movement.
Precisely.
Now, there's one more big theoretical divide we need to cover before the examples. Old social movements versus new social movements, or NSMs. This shows up in the exams a lot.
It does. In fact, if you look at the 2023 and 2017 papers, they explicitly asked about the characteristics of new social movements. The distinction is vital.
Okay, lay it out for us. Old versus new.
Old social movements were largely class-based. Think trade unions, peasant movements of the early 20th century.
Right.
They fought for material things, wages, land, political power. It was, we want more stuff, or we want control of the factory. It was about redistribution of wealth.
Meat and potatoes issues.
And
survival.
Exactly. New social movements, NSMs, which emerged largely in the 1960s and 70s globally, are identity-based. They focus on quality of life.
So not just about money.
Not just about money. Think of the environmental movement, the LGBTQ+ movement, or modern feminism. They aren't asking for higher wages per se. They're asking for dignity, human rights, autonomy, and a clean planet.
It's less give me bread and more recognize who I am.
Perfectly put. And interestingly, the 2025 Paper 1 question on the significance of social movements in the digital era ties directly into this.
How so?
NSMs rely heavily on digital networks because they're often decentralized. They don't have a single head office like a trade union might. They are fluid, networked, and cultural.
Okay, keeping those theories in mind, relative deprivation, resource mobilization, and the old versus new divide, let's jump into the first of our big four.
Let's do it.
This is the one that arguably defines Indian sociology more than any other, the wrath of the soil, peasant and farmer movements.
This is a huge topic. I mean, agriculture is the backbone of India, and agrarian unrest is the backbone of Indian protest history.
But you said we have to start with the definition.
We have to. It trips people up constantly. What is the difference between a peasant and a farmer?
In everyday language, we use them interchangeably. We might say farmers' protest or peasant uprising, but I'm guessing sociology draws a line.
A sharp line. Daniel Thorner proposed this distinction, and it's crucial for your answers.
Okay.
Peasants typically have small holdings or are landless. They engage in subsistence farming. They're eating what they grow.
Right, survival.
They're embedded in a feudal structure, often oppressed by landlords or moneylenders. Their struggles are about survival. They want land to the tiller. They want to end forced labor.
And farmers?
Farmers, on the other hand, are market-oriented. They produce a surplus to sell. They treat agriculture as a business. They aren't fighting landlords. They're fighting the state. They're fighting for better economic policies.
Okay, so a peasant fights to own the land he works on. A farmer owns the land, but fights for a higher minimum support price, an MSP, for his wheat.
Exactly. And historically, we see a transition in India from peasant movements to farmer movements.
Let's trace that.
In the colonial period, movements were almost entirely peasant movements. Think of Champaran in 1917, or Kheda in 1918, or the Tiphaga movement in Bengal.
These were the movements Gandhi often got involved with.
Yes, though sociologists like Sumit Sarkar note that these early movements were often localized and sporadic. They'd flare up when taxes got too high.
Reactive, not proactive.
Right. They weren't necessarily trying to overthrow the system, just survive it. Then, post-independence, specifically in the 50s and 60s, we had the era of land reforms. The slogan was land to the tiller.
It worked.
Partially. And the partial failure of these reforms led to radical peasant movements, the most famous being the Naxalite movement, starting in Naxalbari in 1967. That was a violent peasant uprising against feudal oppression. That was a peasant movement in the truest sense.
But then something changed in the 1970s. The Green Revolution happened.
And that changed the sociology of rural India forever. The Green Revolution created a class of wealthy, surplus-producing farmers, primarily in western UP, Punjab, and Maharashtra.
And these are the guys the sociologists call
Bullock capitalists.
bullock capitalists. I love that term. It sounds contradictory. Bullocks represent the old way, capitalists the new way, but it makes perfect sense. Who are the leaders here?
You have legends like Mahendra Singh Kakate, with the Bharatiya Kisan Union, the BKU in North India, and Shiraj Joshi with the Shetkari Sangatana in Maharashtra.
And what were they asking for?
Notice their demands. They weren't asking for land. They had land. They demanded free electricity, lower fertilizer costs, and higher prices for their crops.
So market-driven demands.
Completely. Shiraj Joshi famously called it the struggle of India versus Bharat.
Meaning urban industrial India exploiting rural agrarian Bharat.
Yes. It was a terms of trade argument. He argued that the cities were sucking the wealth out of the villages by keeping food prices artificially low.
And their methods were different too, right?
Very different. They weren't hiding in the forest like the Naxalites. They were bold. They used rasa roko, blocked the roads, they refused to pay electricity bills, and they laid siege to capital cities.
And they claimed to be apolitical.
Or super party. They wouldn't align with just one party. They would pressure whoever was in power.
Which brings us straight to the present day. You can't talk about this without mentioning the 2020-2021 anti-farm law protests.
That was a textbook example of a new farmers' movement. It was massive, sustained, and well-resourced. Remember our resource mobilization theory?
Right. The langurs, the tractors.
They had langurs, the community kitchens that could feed thousands for months. They had tractors converted into homes. They had funds from the international diaspora.
And the UPSC is watching this closely.
Very closely. The 2024 Paper 2 question specifically asked for an assessment of recent farmers' movements in India. And the 2023 paper asked about the neo-farmers movement.
So if you're writing that answer, you need to connect T.K.'s movement in the 80s to the protests at the Singhu border in 2020.
You have to.
It isn't a new phenomenon, it's a continuum.
Correct. You have to analyze how they're using modern tools, social media, international PR, but fighting for issues that arose from the Green Revolution's economic structure.
Yeah.
It is the bully capitalists flexing their muscle against the state to protect their market interests.
Okay, let's pivot to our second big category. From the fields to the home and the workplace. Segment 3. Half the Sky women's movements. This is a fascinating evolution because it mirrors the changes in how we view democracy itself.
It is. And to understand it, you have to look at who was holding the megaphone.
What do you mean?
If you look at the pre-independence era, the women's question was central to the social reform movement. But here's the catch. It was largely led by men.
The male gaze on women's rights. We need to save our women to make our society look civilized.
That's a cynical way to put it, but it's not entirely wrong. You had Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Renade, great men.
Sure.
They fought against sati, for widow remarriage against child marriage. But women were the subjects of reform, not the leaders. They were being saved by benevolent men. It was paternalistic.
What about women's own organizations?
Now, women did participate in the freedom struggle organizations like the AIWC, the All India Women's Conference, were huge. But the primary goal was national freedom, with women's rights as a secondary track.
The logic was, let's get the British out first, then we'll sort out gender.
Pretty much. Then 1947 happens. We get a constitution that promises equality. Article 14, Article 15. Did the movement stop?
I'm guessing no.
It went into what sociologists call the silent period, from 1947 to the 1970s.
The silent period, why?
There was an assumption that the state and the Constitution would solve everything. We have the vote, we are equal on paper, job done. The women's organizations became wings of political parties, focusing on welfare, distributing milk, literacy classes, not agitation.
But the reality on the ground was very different. The laws were there, but the lives weren't changing.
Drastically different.
Right.
And the silence broke in the 1970s. The trigger was the Mathura rape case.
Huge moment.
A young tribal girl was raped by policemen in a station. The Supreme Court acquitted the policeman, suggesting she had loose morals. This shocked the conscience of the nation.
Unbelievable.
And that, combined with a government report called Towards Equality from 1974, which showed that the status of women was actually declining in many metrics, employment, sex ratio, etc., it just sparked a fire.
This is the resurgence, the rise of the angry woman.
Yes, and this time it was different. We saw the rise of autonomous women's groups.
Meaning independent.
Independent. These groups said, we won't rely on political parties or trade unions because they sideline our issues. They focused on things the left parties ignored. Dowry deaths, custodial rape, domestic violence. They took to the streets not for votes, but for survival.
This is also where we see the link to ecofeminism, right? The Chipko movement.
Yes, women hugging trees not just for the environment, but because the forest was their source of livelihood. It showed that women's issues weren't just about urban rights, they were about rural survival.
And fast forwarding to today, what are the contemporary issues?
Well, the movement has shifted from welfare, help of poor women, to empowerment, and now to rights.
A crucial evolution.
Think about the hashtag #MeToo movement. The UPSC asked about the impact of hashtag #MeToo in India in 2018. This is a digital era movement. It challenged workplace harassment in a way traditional unions never did.
It bypassed the old structure?
It bypassed the courts and went to the court of public opinion. And we also have the legal battles, triple talaq, the Sabarimala right to pray issue.
These are battles for gender justice within religion.
A very new social movement, trait challenging cultural norms. And look at the 2025 Paper 1 question. It asks about the gender-based domestic division of labor.
So it's entering the home now.
The movement is now entering the private sphere of the household, asking, why is housework only a woman's job, even if she has a formal job?
That's the double burden or the second shift. So the movement has gone from save us from sati to let us pray where we want and share the laundry load.
In a way, yes. It has become more intersectional and deeply personal. It's no longer just about laws. It's about daily life, about who cooks dinner, and about safety in the office.
Moving on to segment 4, caste, identity, and dignity. This is arguably the most complex part of Indian sociology. We're talking about Dalit and backward class movements.
And here, you have to be precise with your terminology.
Let's clarify.
Dalit movements referred to the scheduled castes, the formerly untouchable communities fighting for basic human dignity and rights. Backward class, or OBC movements, refer to the intermediate castes, the peasant castes who aren't at the bottom, but aren't the twice-born upper castes either.
And there's a massive geographical divide here, north versus south.
A crucial comparison. If you get a question on caste movements, you must contrast the regions.
So what's the big difference?
The southern movement started much earlier, in the pre-independence era. Think of Periyar's self-respect movement in Tamil Nadu. It was radical. It rejected Hinduism, rejected the Brahmins, and burned Manusmritis. It was an anti-caste cultural revolution. It wasn't trying to fit into the caste system. It was trying to destroy it. Wow. In Kerala, you had Narayana Guru, the SNDP movement. His slogan was, one caste, one religion, one God. He was reformist, trying to simplify rituals, but still very anti-Brahminical dominance.
Meanwhile, in the north, why was it different?
The north was slower. Initially, the lower castes in the north tried Sanskritization, a concept by M.S.A. Srinivas.
What's that?
They tried to emulate the upper castes, wearing the sacred thread, becoming vegetarians, stopping widow remarriage to gain status. They wanted to move up the hierarchy, not destroy it.
So, imitation versus revolution.
A good way to put it. It was only much later, post-independence, that they shifted to political power with parties like the BSP and SP. The South focused on cultural revolution first. The North focused on political capture later.
That's a great way to frame it. Let's zoom in on the Dalit movement specifically.
You have two phases. Pre-independence is dominated by Dr. Ambedkar.
Sure.
The Mahad Satyagraha, fighting for water rights, the temple entry movements. His focus was education, agitation, organization. He wanted to annihilate caste, not just improve it.
But the real shift happens later.
It does. In the 1970s, in Maharashtra with the Dalit Panthers.
That name definitely sounds inspired by the American Black Panthers.
It was directly inspired. They were militant. They were literary. Dalit literature just exploded during this time. And they rejected the Gandhian term Harjan, which means children of God. They found it patronizing.
So what did they use instead?
They claimed the term Dalit, which means broken or oppressed, as a badge of militant identity.
I am not a Harjan, I am a Dalit. It changes the power dynamic completely. It's claiming your own history.
Exactly. And today, Dalit mobilization is about asserting identity, using social media, and internationalizing the caste issue as a human rights issue.
And the UPSC is on this.
Oh yeah. The 2025 Paper 2 question asks specifically about Dalit political mobilizations strengthening democracy.
And what's the argument there?
The argument is that by giving a voice to the most marginalized, these movements have deepened Indian democracy, even if they sometimes seem disruptive. When the lowest rung of the ladder speaks, democracy is working.
And what about the OBCs, the backward classes?
This is the story of the Mandal Commission. It's about the rise of the dominant caste. Another term by M.N. Srinivas.
Who are they?
Castes like Yadavs, Kurmis, Jats, Devars, Fokaligas. They have land, thanks to land reforms and numbers, which means votes.
A powerful combination.
Very. Post-1990, the Mandal moment consolidated their identity. They realized, hey, we're 50% of the population, we should rule.
So the OBC movement is largely a movement for political power and reservations.
Correct.
Whereas the Dalit movement is a fight for basic dignity and protection from violence.
Broadly, yes. Though the lines blur as OBCs also fight for economic benefits and Dalits fight for political representation. But the core driver is different. For one, it is power. For the other, it is existence.
All right, let's take a breath. We've covered farmers, women, and caste. Now let's look at the land itself and the people who live closest to it. Segment 5. Environment and ethnicity.
Okay. Let's start with environment. There's a myth in the West that environmentalism is a post-materialist concern.
Meaning?
Once you're rich, you worry about saving pandas or recycling plastic. It's a luxury.
And in India?
In India, environmentalism is a livelihood struggle. Sociologist Ramachandra Guha calls it the environmentalism of the poor.
Because if the forest is cut down, the local tribal or villager doesn't just lose a view. They lose their fuel, fodder, and water. They lose their life.
Exactly. That's why Chipko from 1973 is the classic example. It wasn't about hugging trees out of romantic love for nature.
It was about survival.
It was women protecting their economic survival base against commercial loggers. And it was deeply Gandhian nonviolent moral resistance.
And again, the UPSC is paying attention.
The 2023 Paper 2 question explicitly asked to contextualize Chipko and its Gandhian tone in the face of global climate concerns. It shows that India had a model of sustainable activism long before the West started talking about climate change.
It's amazing how relevant Chipko still is. What about the Narmada, Bachao, Andalin?
That's another big one. It highlighted the conflict between development, which means big dams, and displacement.
Who pays the price?
Who pays the price for the nation's electricity? Usually the tribals. It brought the concept of rehabilitation to the forefront. It asked the uncomfortable question, can we have development without destruction of local communities?
Speaking of tribals and identity, that brings us to ethnicity.
India is a salad bowl of ethnicities. Ethnic movements often stem from a fear of being swamped by outsiders.
We call these
Sons of the Soil movements. Think of the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra in the 60s targeting South Indians.
Yeah.
Or the Assam movement from 1979-85 against illegal immigrants.
jobs for locals, Assam for SMEs.
Yes. And the theory here is, again, relative deprivation. Outsiders come here and take our jobs or resources.
And the other type of ethnic movement?
You also have subnationalism demands for separate states, like Telangana or Gorkhaland. They feel their region is being exploited by the center or the state capital.
Colonialism.
Internal colonialism, exactly. And they want autonomy to manage their own resources.
And the UPSC loves this topic. The 2019 paper asked about ethno-nationalism and tribal discontent.
Right.
It's all about the fear of losing cultural identity and economic control.
Absolutely. And notice the pattern. Whether it's farmers, Dalits, or tribals, it's always about a group feeling the system is structurally unfair to them.
We've covered the history and the major types, but we are living in 2026. The world has changed. Segment 6, the digital turn in the future.
This is critical. You cannot write a generic answer anymore. The 2025 Paper 1 question on social movements in the digital era is a hint that you cannot write an answer today without mentioning social media. Platforms like Twitter or X, WhatsApp, and Instagram act as force multipliers.
You can organize a protest in hours now, not months. You don't need a telephone tree.
Exactly. It lowers the cost of mobilization. You don't need a printing press for pamphlets. You just need a meme.
And that allows for
leaderless movements. Think of the anti-CAA protests or the early phase of the farmers' protest. There wasn't one single general giving orders. It was decentralized.
which makes it hard to shut down.
It makes it very hard for the government to suppress because there is no head to cut off. It's like a hydra.
But there's a flip side, right? Slacktivism.
A huge downside. Putting a black square on Instagram feels like doing something, but does it change policy? We call it clicktivism. It satisfies the urge to act without the sacrifice of action. Also, polarization. Social media algorithms feed you outrage. It makes compromise impossible. If you're in a movement online, the other side isn't just wrong, they're evil.
And fake news can trigger riots before the truth even puts its shoes on?
Precisely. The speed is dangerous. We also have to mention civil society. The 2024 paper asked about civil society organizations contributing to grassroots changes.
The NGOs?
The NGOs. They're the third sector between the state and the market. In a digital age, they're the ones often documenting rights violations and feeding that data to the movements. They provide the intellectual ammunition.
So civil society provides the data, and social media provides the megaphone.
That's a great synthesis.
Okay. We are nearing the end of our dive. That was a marathon. Let's try to bring this all together in our outro.
If you take one thing away from this whole deep dive, let it be this. Social movements are the corrective mechanism of Indian society.
Explain that.
Our society has deep cracks, gender inequality, economic disparity between farmers and industry. The political system often ignores these cracks because it's busy winning elections.
Right.
Social movements are the alarm bells. They highlight the cracks so they can be fixed. Without them, the pressure would build up until the system explodes.
They are the safety valve.
Exactly. Whether it's a Dalit leader demanding dignity, a farmer blocking a highway for MSP, or a woman tweeting #MeToo, they are all doing the work of democracy. They are forcing the center to look at the margins.
But I want to leave the listeners with a provocative thought, something to chew on.
Okay. Here's my worry for the future. Are we moving towards a society of permanent protest?
What do you mean by that?
With social media, the cost of mobilization is zero. It's so easy to start a hashtag trend, but is the depth of engagement also becoming zero? Are we confusing likes with legislation? A million tweets might feel like a revolution, but unless it translates into policy change or institutional reform, it's just noise.
So are we becoming a society that is great at shouting, but terrible at listening and negotiating?
That's the question I'd leave you with.
That is actually a little terrifying. It's the difference between performance and progress.
Well, on that note, we have to wrap up.
Listeners, if this breakdown helped you understand the chaos of the news a little better, imagine having the full notes and model answers to ace your exam. This deep dive was powered by Simplified UPSC by PPP.
Please go join the public Telegram channel right now for the free notes and the PYQ list we discussed. It's all there for you.
And if you want the premium stuff, the model mains answers that connect all these theories to current events, DM the team on Telegram to join the private library.
It's really worth it if you're serious about this.
And if you can, support us on Patreon. It keeps the lights on and the research deep. Thank you to all our supporters. You make this possible.
We appreciate it more than you know.
Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Tell us, which movement do you think has been the most effective in modern India?
Keep learning. Keep questioning.
See you in the next deep dive.